Back in 1974, Disney was a very different creature. In my endless quest to find Viking-related media and movies, I was going through Disney's old archives and stumbled upon this film about a group of adventurers and explorers who traveled north to the Arctic set in the early 1900s. These adventurers go on this grand adventure, discovering all sorts of interesting things and having themes and settings that would be totally out of place in any Disney film made in the last, really 10, 15 years. I stumbled upon The Island at the Top of the World. Directed by Robert Stevenson and starring Donald Sinden as Sir Anthony Ross, the film follows a group of adventurers who embark on a perilous quest to find a lost city that's rumored to be located near the North Pole. Along the way, they encounter a society of Viking-like people who live in isolation and have managed to preserve their traditional way of life.
Exactly like parts of Iceland.
There are buildings down there.
Looks like some sort of settlement.
People. There are people.
Like other films of its time, The Island at the Top of the World is a classic adventure story, draws inspiration from Jules Verne's works, such as The Journey to the Center of the Earth and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The film takes this format, but with a twist, going to the far north, near Greenland. They ride in a Frenchman's home-built adventuring airship called the Hyperion to try to find this lost island. But when they attempt to fly over the cliffs, a great storm drives them into the rocks, where they crash land on this uncharted island. Managing to survive the crash and finding themselves stranded high up in the desolate mountains, they soon encounter a band of men speaking Old Norse.
Do you understand their language?
It's Norse. The Old Norse of the sagas. Their weapons, their clothes, their whole appearance. They're Viking.
Vikings?
Who capture them and lead them to the lost city of Astrogard.
This is like an archaeologist's dream. To go back in history and walk the earth as it was 10 centuries ago.
From here, the cast go on exciting action sequences, facing peril, finding romance, and wonder in this new exotic land. The Island at the Top of the World is a fascinating tale that begins in the early 1900s. An Englishman, Sir Anthony Ross, recruits a Scandinavian-American historian named Professor John Iverson from the University of Minnesota, played by the German-American actor David Hartman, to help him find his son Donald.
You're an American from the University of Minnesota, currently a guest lecturer at the University of Christiania. Your speciality is the archaeology of the North. In the past, you've led several successful expeditions.
Donald, Sir Anthony Ross's son, has gone missing while on an expedition to find the legendary island where the whales go to die.
You are my son's guide. What happened to him?
Hello? This is the father of Donald Ross. I think you've seen this before. This is the place where the whales go to die. It's the island Donald was looking for.
Although initially believing it to be a myth,
Sir Anthony, the graveyard of whales is just a fantasy. Fact is, it simply doesn't exist.
when discovering that this island is real and full of his long-lost Scandinavian cousins living in their old traditional ways, Professor Iverson is in awe and yearns to discover the mysteries of this icy, otherworldly land.
This is like an archaeologist's dream, to go back in history and walk the earth as it was 10 centuries ago.
At the end of the film, even, Professor Iverson decides to stay and join his kin in Astrogard to live and experience the life and history he's been fascinated with all his life.
Are you really sure you want to be left behind?
Yes, I'm sure. Not only to study the past, but to relive it. I mean, here it all is.
What's interesting is they're not depicted as dirty, leather-wearing savages, in biker outfits with their hair shaven, as you see in, a lot of modern depictions of Vikings. They're seen as much more civilized, wearing colorful clothing, living much more in harmony with nature, and they're still warlike, but they're not, savage and brutish like you see in a lot more modern depictions. It actually has a bit more natural feel with, how you'd see Scandinavians today. The cast of the movie for the People of Astragard are almost exclusively Scandinavians. The leading woman character is Swedish. She's a Swedish actor and model. The other characters are mostly Norwegians, and when they say they're speaking Old Norse, if you pay attention, they're actually just speaking Norwegian, which is pretty funny.
Det er sant han er far av Donald.
Tro ikke på deg! Ikke kan jeg lite på slike.
Men hvordan kan de vite om Donald?
It's also entertaining to see a film that just revels and enjoys the cliche differences between different nations of Europe. The Frenchman is stereotypically French in a lovable and fun way.
Ah, Monsieur Ross! What a pleasure!
The Englishmen are both stereotypically English in a very English way, and the Minnesotan is, very Minnesotan Scandinavian. If you've ever been to Minnesota, he would fit right in. You can see a film that just loves the characters and the countries that it's dealing with. It's not trying to get any sort of critiques. It's a fun, family, wholesome adventure. So it's really refreshing to go back to just a time where you could have, classic European great adventure story. There are just so many moments of childlike wonder and adventure that hit you with that. There's also an entertaining scene where they're brought before the Gothi of the island, the law speaker, who accuses them of being spies for the Skrælingr.
Disse menn er ildsluga skrælingar som traktar efter vårt dyra land.
And this was a term the Vikings had for natives in North America. It's kind of entertaining to see that the people of Astrogard are still very much connected to the history of the Vinland sagas. So it is one of those things where you could imagine, perhaps in 1907, there being this lost colony still hidden far in the north that hasn't been discovered by satellites or anything else to this time. The setting itself is extremely beautiful. You have the dated special effects of 1974, but you have some of these just gorgeous map paintings showing the environment that they live in, and it's really this achievable but beautiful land to imagine living in Astrogard. Very reminiscent of Norway, just visually very colorful, evocative of these grand Nordic aesthetics, but kind of dialed up even higher to 11 with beautiful architecture. One has to speculate what would happen today if Astrogard was discovered. If there really was a real-life lost Viking land that was filled with descendants of Scandinavians, how would our understanding of archaeology and history change? What would the public reaction be? Would they be invaded by another military power for North America, Europe, or elsewhere? Would they even be allowed to maintain their ancient ways of life? Or would they be forced to modernize and integrate with the EU or North America? Countries such as Bhutan have managed to largely hold on to their ancient ways, but that's through extremely strict policies on, not just on immigration, but on visitors. It's extremely expensive to visit Bhutan. You have to pay continuously while you're there, even just to walk around and see it, because they're very, very protective of their ancient culture. Would the same thing be possible for Astrogard? Do they even have the military means to enforce some rule like that? Or would they be easily infected by different political ideologies, mimetic ideas and viruses? Would they be able to last and preserve their ways of life like the Amish do today? Or would they just be forced to assimilate into modernity by having outside forces of international finance and government set up McDonald's? Or would they be like Japan in 1854, when they were bombed by the Americans into being forced to open trade agreements? Or would Europeans and the other continents of the world look to Astrogard for inspiration and proof that older ways of life are still possible? Would they see Astrogard as a place of inspiration, that it is still possible to thrive and prosper without modern technology and modern values? would we see that we can still restore the magic and vitality and health and beauty of living a more natural and traditional way of life. I'd highly recommend going to check out the film for yourself. I spoiled a little bit of it in this video, but it's really a phenomenal film and something totally family friendly, you know, very wholesome message. You can find the film on Disney Plus, or, you know, you can find the DVD on Amazon like I did. Might be available at other retailers too. Unfortunately, there's not like a Blu-ray or super high-res edition, but I'm just happy to have a copy of it because it's just such a cool film and nothing like it. It's really hard to imagine anything like it getting made today. Let me know what you make of this in the comments, drop a like, and yeah, let me know what you want me to cover next. I was thinking it might be fun to do a Viking tier list movie ranking. That might be just a fun episode. I'm gonna do more analysis of different media and movies that are, you know, Viking related and history related, so stick around for that. It's gonna be a lot of fun.